Okay, yeah, welcome to Heaven Can Wait podcast. I'm your host, Morten Wolf, and the podcast and my website all focus on the goal of making you feel healthier, happier, and stronger. And often I will translate the latest in science into an easy, digestible form for you to follow. I'm going to be inviting guests, regular guests, hopefully weekly, that's going to share their experiences with you. So they can tell about their transformations in their life. And today we have a really good friend of mine called Frank Behrendt. He's a 58-year-old Danish man. He's lived all over the world and he speaks three fluent languages, plus a few more just to get by. And he's a bit of an artist. He has done multiple things in his life. He's a bit of an artist. He's a restaurant professional. And today he works as a headhunter in South Africa, where he lives with his wife. And again, he's turning an artist again, a food artist. So when I met Frank first time, I think that was around when we were 18 years old. We had this crazy idea of driving around in the forest in the middle of the night, playing hide and seek. And we were both sitting in the back seat of a car. And what basically went on there, one car was left behind, waiting 10 minutes, and the rest of us scattered around the forest, hiding in our cars. I mean, it was actually illegal to do these things. And I can remember we were sitting on the back seat and the guy that was driving the car actually crashed his car. And we thought it was really funny. And I think that was one of the first memories I have of speaking to Frank. And since then, we've really been friends. Frank has had quite a bit of adversity in his life. He had to grow up very quickly when he was young. And Frank, can you tell us a little bit about that? How was that?
Yeah, sure. I also remember being roommates with you in Copenhagen for a number of years, and we had a lot of fun there too,
We did, yeah.
playing different kinds of hide and seek. But yes, so basically, when I was 13 years old, my mom was diagnosed with diabetes, and that meant that she had to go into hospital twice a year for 2 weeks at a time in order to get adjusted. That's how they did it back then. And I'd always been very interested in cooking, and I was always hanging in her skirts in the kitchen, trying to look at what she had going on in the pots and how she did all the dough for the breads and stuff like that. But then when she was away from the family for 2 week stretches twice a year, it was decided that I should be the family cook when she was away. And so I would sit at her bedside in the hospital every day and take notes of what I was meant to go and buy at the grocery store. And then I would go home and put it all together and feed the family. And then on the day that she got discharged from hospital, I would always cook her favorite meal, which was cabbage rolls. And so basically, just for the cooking, which has been one of the threads throughout my life that I've always felt passionate about, and that it's always been a go-to when I was stressed out, or when I was bored, or just when I wanted to, cook something for people and share food with people. And the basics I got from my mom in that period, from I was 13 years old until I moved out when I was 19. I cooked for the family for 4 weeks every year. And as I got older, like 15, 16, 17, even when my mom was home, sometimes I would cook, but I would always be in the kitchen with her and to get the techniques of how you thicken a sauce. So there's 3 ways of thickening a sauce, and how long, how you know when something is done, basically just like thumb rules for everything in the kitchen. So when I moved out, like you said, Morten, I was into theater and modern dance and stuff like that when I was in my 20s. But that's a whole other story. And so when I was in my 30s, basically, I decided that the other thing that I'd been doing, which was restaurant work, because I moved to London when I was 21, and I started working in restaurants. And obviously the food thing was like a thread through that as well.
I made you think for
and
you.
then, yeah, exactly. So when I was 32, I joined the Hard Rock Cafe in Copenhagen as assistant general manager. And then my career just took off. And I was with the Hard Rock for just under 10 years,
Yeah.
opening cafes worldwide. And at the Hard Rock, I basically learned all the industrial stuff around food production, hygiene, temperature limits, et cetera, et cetera. So, what I learned from my mom got put into like a proper professional frame, and I started also to get an eye for what the food looks like. And it's always been very important to me to present the food so that it is mouth-wateringly appetizing to look at, and so that people, before they even eat it, that they eat it with their eyes before they eat it with their mouth and their stomach.
Yeah.
So basically.
Yeah. No. So I mean, when you were younger, you have an older brother and a sister. I mean, did they not do the cooking, or was it just you? Was it left to you mainly?
Yeah, it was left to me, at least as far as I remember. They never did any of the cooking, but they can both cook today. So they must have also snapped up some snippets here and there.
Yeah.
But I was definitely the main cook in the family. And so my dad left and they got divorced, and blah. And then
was that early on
when
in your life then?
Yes, that was in my teenagehood, but they got back together again, but then they finally got divorced when I was 19. And then I left and moved to Copenhagen when I was 19, and then I moved to London when I was 21. And then I lived in Mexico, and I lived in Canada, and I lived in a number of different places. And then I came home because my mom was really sick, and she was basically dying. And so I took, at the time I was working in a private hospital in Copenhagen, just an admin role. Quite random, but there you have it. And so I took a 6-month paid leave to where the municipality paid for me to be my mom's nurse.
Yeah, okay.
And so I basically nursed her for the last 6 months of her life, and then she died in December, and I joined the Hard Rock the following March, and it was just like a catalyst that I all of a sudden I had all this freedom because, as you can imagine, being a carer for somebody who is very, very sick and needs assistance with everything is all-consuming. And so when she died, and she was only 52, so I wouldn't say that it was time. It definitely wasn't time, but it nonetheless liberated me to concentrate on my own life again.
Yeah.
And that's when I sort of ran into the Hard Rock, and they actually headhunted me.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
So I was traveling around the world. I opened 20 Hard Rocks in Barcelona, in Rome, in Amman, in Jordan, Ankara, in Turkey, Cairo, in Egypt. 20 of them all around the world. Then I lived in Amsterdam for 5 years. At the end of that stint, and I met my wife, Carrie, and we then moved to Singapore to take up where I took up headhunting. A friend of mine, friend of ours actually, had set up a headhunting firm in Frankfurt, and they were opening in Singapore. And long story short, we got talking, and he said, I think you'd be good at this. And so I took a stab at it, and sure enough, it turned out to be quite well suited to me because it's all to do with people. So it's a highly fluid area of work where, I'm a person, my client is a person, and my product is also a person.
Yes.
So it's highly fluid and potentially chaotic. And I thrive well in these slightly chaotic situations where nothing is ever, guaranteed. and people change their minds all the time, and circumstances change, and what you thought you had yesterday, it doesn't look like that the following morning at all. So I quite like that. It challenges me to, it keeps me on my feet.
Yeah. So if I take you a little bit back, because when I met you in Copenhagen, I mean, you were doing modern dancing.
Yes.
Yeah, and what I always admired with you, I mean, even though we might have been partying till the early hours, you were always up every single morning. There was no excuse for you not to go to your classes, and I found that really admirable. And I mean, why didn't you continue the dancing? Did you not see a future in it all?
I did have a career in it. To your point, when I don't do things in half measures. When I do something, I really do it. Cool. And if I decide to do something, I go for it 100%. It's not, there is no compromise. And with the art career, so I went into modern dance and dance theater. And I made a living of that more or less through my 20s. And I worked in restaurants here and there, on and off. I did stints in Germany. I worked for a while in Spain. I had some really big professional jobs in Finland at a big theater there. And I did some choreographies for a little troupe where I was also a performer. And there was four of us, and I was the producer and the performer and the choreographer, and there was a woman from Switzerland. She was a clown, and she was also the director. There was a guy from India, and he was a performer, but he was also the set designer. And then there was a girl from Greenland. So it was about the myth of Tristan and Isolde.
Yeah.
And basically we went on a tour, and a tour that I had sold to theaters around Scandinavia and Greenland. And we started up in the north of Scandinavia and drove down in an old rickety van with all the set and ourselves in it. And there was only the four of us, and we would rock up at this new venue in the morning, and we would spend all day setting up the set. Then we would do the show in the evening, pull it all down, sleep in a hotel, and start again from the beginning the next morning. And then when we got to Odense in Denmark, and the Greenlandic girl and the Swiss girl had a cat fight behind the stage, and they scratched each other in the face, so they drew blood. And the Greenlandic girl just got on a train and basically said, "Sayonara, see you, I'm off the project." And we didn't have any understudies or anything like that. So basically the whole project fell apart. And because I was the producer and had sold the show to these all these venues across Denmark and also Greenland, and our income was basically depending on the fact that we would get that income from those shows, we ended up with a huge debt. And because I had signed all the papers, the debt landed on me. And that's when I said to myself, enough with this artsy fartsy stuff. I'm now going to do what I know. And that's basically, I had a period where I did temp jobs and here and there, and that's why I worked in that private hospital as well. But I also worked in a restaurant in Copenhagen that I helped start up. It was called Tech's Hot and Rock. And it was basically a copy of a restaurant that I used to work in London called Break for the Border. And so that's how Hard Rock found me, through one of the suppliers. The guy who sold Corona beer knew me, and he said to Hard Rock, "You must speak to Frank," and that's how they found me.
So where do you think
then I started with the Hard Rock, and then I stopped.
Yeah. Why do you think that determination comes from? I mean, when you go in for something, you go 100%. Where does that come from, do you think?
So I remember being a very mediocre student in school. But I had a eureka moment in the 7th grade because I'd always been bottom of the class and very disinterested in school, actually. But in the 7th grade, I wrote an essay, and all of a sudden I was top of class. And my Danish teacher was really impressed, and he made me read it out loud to the entire class.
Would you share that with us? What was it about?
It was called A Busy Day. The theme was a busy day, and I wrote about a really busy family, and there was no real story to it. It was just like a description of a full day them both working and stressing around and trying to reach this point and that point, and so it started in the morning and finished in the evening, and it included things like smoking cigarettes and stuff that children shouldn't really write about, but it was a very grown up. I remember, I don't actually have it anymore, but I remember the success feeling that it gave me, and the feeling of confidence that it gave me when my teacher said, this is the best essay anybody in the 7th grade has ever written. And all of a sudden I felt elevated to a point where I realized that I can do whatever I want to do.
So such a little thing, yeah. Such a little thing can
honestly,
propel, and can change people's lives for good, really.
Yes, and I think that same energy has stuck with me for the rest of my life. And so my life, like you said, I've had adversity, and I've had financial difficulties, and I've been on roller coasters up and down. But there's always a moment when I catch myself and I get that feeling that, like that I know that I can do whatever I want to do. And so the same thing happened with the headhunting story, because I had never done it before. And our friend John took a whole week to explain things to me from the bottom and up. We had a hotel room in Singapore. I was already hired for the job. And so I gave it my all. And it took me 6 months before I placed anybody. And this is like really top executive search in the banking world. And then when I finally placed someone, I placed 3 ladies in one day. So generally, when it rains, it pours. That's how it works in my life.
Yeah.
And so I realized that this is something that I'm actually very good at, and I also enjoy it a lot because like I said before, it's highly fluid and it's all to do with people. When I was with the Hard Rock, responsible for the openings, I also did loads and loads of recruitment. Obviously, I hired thousands of people, and we had big recruitment days with long queues out the door. And so speaking to people is something that has become a part of what I'm really good at,
Yeah.
So I can sort of read people and understand where they're coming from, and I can understand what they're trying to get out of whatever conversation I'm having with them.
Yeah.
And I also I'm also quite good at steering the conversation in the direction that I need for whatever it is that I'm talking to them about, very generally now.
Yes, because I can help.
So, but anyway, I am in the middle of a new sort of awakening. And it very much draws on my background in food, but also in people. So recently, or let's say in the last few years, the emphasis on making the food that I make for other people look beautiful and appetizing has become bigger and bigger.
I wish I could share some of these images with people, because I've seen some of your images on Instagram and so on, and I mean, it's absolutely mouth-watering. I'm not necessarily a vegan, but when you look at that, I mean, you feel like this is just wonderful. And if I could share that with my audience, it would be great. And we're going to come back to where people can find these images a little bit later. I just want to go a little bit back to when you work for Hard Rock Cafe. I mean, you were there for many, many years. Yeah. And suddenly you lost your job from one day to another, more or less.
Yes.
And you were just unemployed for a whole year. I can remember you moved in with me. We had a Ford in the back garden, and you actually moved in there.
Yeah, but first, I mean, that's when I met my wife, and then she moved over to Amsterdam, and then I quit the Hard Rock, and then we went traveling for a whole year in Asia, and we spent all my money, all my savings, because I just sold my flat in Copenhagen, and I got some money out of the Hard Rock. And I had, I guess, around 100,000 euros in the bank account. And then we were going to go to Vietnam with a couple of ours that were on a honeymoon. We'd just been to their wedding in Venice. And they were flying. They came to Amsterdam just that week, coincidentally. And then the guy, Morris, he said, I'm looking for a mate to drive a motorcycle across the mountain chains of northern Vietnam to the border of China. And I looked at Carrie and I said, shall we go? And she said, yes. And that Saturday we were on a plane going to Hanoi, and we got the jabs in the airport in Schiphol. And we were only going away for 3 weeks, but we stayed away for a whole year. And I had somebody look after our 2 cats in my apartment. I paid all the rent and all the bills. Ollie, if you hear this, you know I'm talking about you. And so basically, one day we traveled all over Asia, Vietnam, Laos. We lived in Cambodia for about 9 months, also running a restaurant that we ran into some people that Carrie had known in the past. And then one day, and then we went traveling again after that. And one day I put my card in the ATM machine and it said, ah! And so I had an emergency traveler. I had an emergency traveler's check in my back pocket, and I said to Carrie, okay, it's time to go home and start from the beginning.
That must have been a big experience.
That's when I came and moved in with you for a while, or spent a lot of time up at your fort, also doing music and whatever else. And I was unemployed for a while, and we went into that startup venture, AVP, remember?
Yes, that's right.
Where I was the COO. So there was a couple of years there where I was kind of floating around, and I wasn't really focusing on anything. And then the headhunting thing presented itself, and I realized that this was an excellent opportunity for my life to take the next turn. But you know, you were the one who mentioned vegan just now, and so obviously, you know, over all these years, I have also been very much a foodie and a food lover. So I've been overweight a few times in my life, and I've managed to lose the weight, but I've always put it back on again. And now that I'm 58, you know, at the end of last year, or last few years, I started putting on weight again, and I went to the doctor about 2.5 years ago, I guess, and he took my blood pressure and he said, oh my God, you're just about to have a stroke. You must go on blood pressure medicine. And I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah. And I go, okay, then. And then, you know, it was quite bad. I think my blood pressure was like 200 over 110 or something like that.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And my cholesterol was like 10 point something. So he put me on statins and he put me on blood pressure meds, and they all had really bad side effects, like, you know, like really numb legs, and I wasn't able to walk very far, and I suddenly felt very old, and I felt like, oh my God, is this the end, you know? And I tried 6 or 7 different combinations of different blood pressure medicines to see if we could get me out of these side effects, and it just, nothing was working. And then one night I just realized inside my head, you know, I had read some articles and I'd seen some stuff on Netflix about food for medicine. And then one day I saw this program. It's called Forks Over Knives, and it's on Netflix. Look it up. And basically it's whole foods, plant-based. So it's not just vegan. It's actually no processed foods at all, but you can take it as far as you like, obviously. But me being me, I've taken it to the extreme. What I'm doing is considered extreme by most people. And so I don't use oil, no olive oil, no coconut oil, no vegetable oil, no oil. I cook only with water and vegetable stock. So I'll do a vegetable stock that is kind of like a sourdough. I never throw away the vegetable water when I cook potatoes or any other vegetable. I always put it, I have a bottle in the fridge that is my vegetable water. And when I cook vegetables, I take that out of the fridge, put it in a pot, add a little bit of water, put my vegetables in it.
A bit fermented.
No, not really, because it's cooked every day. So, you know, it's completely sterile, but it's got the concentrate of the caramelization of all the vegetables that I've had. And once in a while, I'll use it up and start a new one. So that is where a lot of the flavor in my food comes from, is that stock. I also bake bread. So I bake fuldkornsbrød or full-corn bread, like Danish style rye bread. And I have my own starter dough that I made myself. And I made it on the 5th of January. And that is a fermentation process.
Yeah.
And so I bake like 4 loaves of bread every month, and I don't buy any bread in the store. I only eat my own bread. I also make kimchi, which is also a fermentation process. So I'll make huge batches of that, and I give it away to all my friends. They all love it. and basically, so basically, from one day to the next, the 5th of January 2020, so before Corona, it was nothing to do with Corona, or everything to do with wanting to get off the meds. And so from one day to the next, I went from being a carnivore of note, somebody who loves things like steak tartare, sashimi, raw stuff, and meats and all sorts of meats, including offal and kidney and heart and whatever else I grew up on, and fish and really smelly cheeses and whatever else. From one day to the next, I went to whole foods, plant-based, to the most extreme point where when I go to the supermarket, I won't buy anything if it has any citric acid or flavor enhancer or stabilizer or any E number. Any E number, I'm out. So even canned vegetables, some are only beans, water, and salt, and that's what I'll buy. But most have beans, water, salt, and citric acid, and I won't buy that. And so basically, long story short, the result of that was that in the first week of doing that, I lost 6 kilos. I was at 103 kilos at the time. And after 3 weeks, I was off the meds and I was 10 kilos down. It's now October. And for the last 3 months, I've been stable at 74, 75 kilos. I'm off the meds. I've refound my inner energy that was numbed by all this medicine that I was taking. Off meds, I only eat this food. My wife is slowly starting to join me. My sister is slowly starting to join me. And I FaceTime with her like every other day, and I can see it in her face. I can see her skin is getting, younger. She's looking younger. And that everybody says to me, of course, that's no secret. Everybody's like, Frank, you look amazing. What are you doing? What is it? And then, but then obviously, if they come and eat with me, they are happy that they could also do that if they had access to food like that every day. But they consider it to be a huge effort, which I obviously don't. I don't consider it to be any effort at all because I do it because I love doing it.
Yeah.
So for me, effort is connected to stuff that is a chore. And so I have chores in my life and I do procrastinate on certain things, but it's not food.
No.
And when I have dinner parties, I spend 3 days preparing because some of the things that I want to make need that preparation time. Because if you don't use shortcuts and flavor enhancers and oil and things like that, then you need to do things in a different way where you eke out flavor of stuff that has very little flavor. And you intensify the flavor and you concentrate on things like color and color combinations and what it looks like on the plate and the temperatures. And sometimes you want something to be cold, other times you want stuff to be room temperature, other times you want it to be body temperature, sometimes you want it to be hot. And so, there's a whole variety of things that you have to consider when you're cooking food that is actually where there are a lot of recipes out there. But I generally look at what's in my pantry and what's in my fridge, and then I get inspired by that, and then I get an idea, and then I cook that. And if it's just for me and Carrie, then I can whip something up in 20 minutes, and it's still beautiful to look at, and it tastes great, and it's really healthy.
Yeah, you like the presentation of it also. I mean, that's what I can see. It looks like a piece of art when you look at the plate you're presenting.
So we went to and my blood pressure is now 120 over 80, and my cholesterol is 3.2.
And this is great.
And I'm not on medicine.
And this is what you suggest other people should do too when they're on that kind of medication.
Yes. I mean, like I said, my wife was a reluctant passenger on this journey to begin with. And she felt a bit bereaved and a bit hard done by that she couldn't have, I mean, of course, I never pressed this on her, but it's still difficult to live as a married couple when you have completely different diets and you eat completely different things every day. So me not being up for compromise, because I'm never going back to where I need medicine.
No.
The onus was obviously on her to adjust her diet and lifestyle as well. And so she did, to a certain extent, become vegetarian, but she was still having milk and butter and eggs and things like that. And then one day, not too long ago, actually, it's about a month and a half ago, she had a turn, and she was feeling quite dizzy, and she was feeling a bit faint. And I kind of had to like catch her on the floor, and so I took her to the doctor immediately. And her blood pressure was through the roof, and her cholesterol was 10.1. And so Dr. Ward, he's also become a friend of mine, Walter, he's very impressed with what I've done. He says, yeah, but you can't compare to Frank because he's undergone a complete body transformation.
Yeah, but she can do that too, can't she?
yeah, and she's doing it.
And
now,
many
so,
other people can do that
she's,
when they're on this kind of medication.
She's lost 5 kilos, and she's also, she's still on very weak statins because she's reluctant to. She's more, risk averse, I suppose, than I am. But she's coming off of them, and she's also at the beginning of this journey. But she's already lost 6 kilos. She already looks a lot younger.
Yeah, transformation
she's got her curves
again.
back. Yeah. She's going through a transformation, and my sister as well.
Yeah.
And so I can only recommend that to people that that are relying on medicines.
Yeah.
We
were talking about medicines and so on. I mean, I can remember one time, I think, was it the diving that caused it? But I mean, you suffered from chronic sinusitis, and you were actually giving some meds in London, opioid-based medication. Yeah.
Yes.
And you became quite dependent on it. Yes. I remember, and it was quite hard for you to kick that habit. And you suddenly, again, because of your determination, you wanted this cold turkey, and you had a horrible 2 weeks where you were sweating and a bit like a drug addict that's trying to get. Basically. So that was a horrible experience too, wasn't it?
Yes. Definitely. I mean, and that's just one thing that I've had, but I've also suffered throughout my life with skin fungus and just mild things like irritants that I've never really considered to be big inconveniences, but nonetheless, actually, when I look back, they have been big inconveniences. And I had fungus in my toenail, and I had fungus on my fingers and things like that. It's all gone.
Yeah, it's a way that your body is completely gone. Yeah, it's all the toxins that's building up in your body. Your body's trying to cope with it, and this is the way it comes out: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, skin rashes, allergic reactions, and so on. I mean, the biggest 4 killers in society, heart conditions, cancer, and diabetes, and dementia is all lifestyle related. So the best thing you can do for yourself is literally change your lifestyle, like you do. I mean, you're taking it to the extreme, and if people can just learn from that and take it a bit like you're doing it, I think people can really benefit from it.
Yeah, I agree. And on top of that, I also grow my own vegetables, and I live in a lovely house here in Johannesburg in South Africa now, and I have a 1,000 square meter plot. And I'm slowly turning it into a 100% self-sustained kitchen garden. So last year in the summer, and it's our summer now, I would say that 70% of our vegetables came from my own garden. This year, it's going to be 100%. And then next year, it's going to be winter as well. So I want to have, I'm now writing a map and a plan for what and where to grow when, in order to be completely self-sustained throughout the year. So I'll never have to go to the supermarket and buy another pesticide, fungicide, herbicide sprayed vegetable that will be able to look fresh for 2 weeks out of the fridge. And that's what we're eating today. That's what, and we all consider to be healthy, but actually it's not. There's a lot of chemicals in what we eat in vegetables, and the agricultural industry needs to do that because of the supply chain, etc. So I'm cutting through all that crap now by growing it myself. I'm also composting all my own food waste. And this year, for the first time, I harvested like 3 or 4 cubic meters of compost that I spread all over my garden. And there's like 3 stages of composting that is happening in my garden. So I'm bringing more and more of my life necessities home. So I also want a borehole. I want to have my own water supply. I want solar panels so I don't have to be on the grid. You know what I mean? I'm slowly working to And so the icing on the cake is that I've come up with that idea now to do a TV show, and it's going to be called Grow, Eat, Yum, and it's going to be about growing and eating plant food, only eating plant food, and as much as of it as possible homegrown, and the rest of it organic. So everything has to be organic, not sprayed. As you can imagine, I eat lots of legumes and nuts and things like that, and that to a certain extent still needs to be purchased. But so I want to share with people how you can do this by yourself, and you can still eat food that is really good for you, tastes really well, looks beautiful, is super fresh, and that will blow people's head off. And so I love having people over because I'm able to create something that other people marvel at, and they when they eat it, they eat everything, and the plates are always empty, and so and also the bartering thing of it. So a friend of mine has this cable TV subscription, and you can log in. 5 different people can log in online at the same time. So he gave me a login, and I pay him with 2 loaves of bread a month.
Do you think the COVID crisis is that this lockdown has had something to do with why you had so much time on your hands, so that you've been able to realize this also?
I think that it's not only me. I think there is a collective awakening in terms of how people look at their lives and how they weigh it. And people were so busy getting on the tube and buses and traffic and being in the office and being busy for the sake of being busy, just like quantity rather than quality. And so I think that this is a global thing. This is not an Africa thing or I'm running out of battery here suddenly. Let me see why that is happening.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think a lot of people are having to reevaluate their life here during the COVID crisis. They're sitting at home now, and they don't really know what to. I mean, you have so much time on your hands, and if you're actually able to do these transformations, it's a good time to do it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So.
Are you enjoying your age now? You're feeling a lot stronger and happier and healthier now than you have done in a long time.
Maybe. Definitely. I am really. Excuse me. I'm really sorry about this, but I'm just about to run out of battery, so I just have to hook myself up here. Yes, I feel alive and.
Yeah, but that's great. I mean,
yeah. Okay, I'm back on. Yes, I feel alive and energized, and I feel that I'm questioning everything now. I'm questioning why we did things the way that we did them before, and I'm modifying my behavior accordingly. So for business, for example, I've also started my own firm here August the 1st, and I've redefined all the parameters of my professional life and anything that has to do with executive search.
Yeah.
And I have weaved in things that we have learned from the Corona crisis, like remote interviewing, remote hiring, and remote trust building. And things like, I used to fly to Nigeria and Kenya and London every 6 weeks. Every other week I was on an airplane for a long distance haul. I'm not going to do that anymore. No. Even when I can, I'm going to travel less, and I'm going to make it count when I do travel.
Yeah.
So I used to go to Nigeria or even London, from Joburg to London for 2 days for a couple of meetings.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah. So now I realize that it's crazy. Back then I didn't even question it. Now I'm going to go to London maybe twice a year, and I'll stay for 2 weeks and really immerse myself in the business life there, and my clientele and my candidate community, and really immerse myself in that culture, so that when I come home, I don't actually have to go again. And I also, utilizing things like video conferencing, like what we're doing now, is something that has changed because of necessity. But on top of the necessity, there is a layer of actually people realizing that it really works, and it works for the better. It works for the better for the planet, and it works for the better for the individual as well.
Yeah, we
And
never
so I
gonna.
think
Yeah.
with this lifestyle that I now have here, with my house, my wife, and my little dog, and our little bubble, and also the neighborhood. And I'm the chairman of the homeowners association. Of course, I was that after 3 months of moving in, just to exert my influence and get out of it what we wanted, which was safety, because there was a issue with the gate at the front. It's another long story. But I'm now so entrenched in the community here. And I give away bread and kimchi and other foodstuffs that I make to my neighbors, and they love it. And I even gave a starter dough to a neighbor of mine, and she says, "Oh, can I just have your bread instead, please?"
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's me and Carrie and my dog Pip first. Then it's the neighborhood that we live in. So the next piece will be to expand growing stuff to other people's gardens, so that if somebody has an apple tree and I have a pear tree, we can exchange apples for pears. I'm already doing that too with one of my neighbors. He has a really lush lemon tree, and the lemons are so big and juicy, nothing that you could ever buy in a supermarket. And so I give him a 6-pack of beer every month, and he gives me 2 big bags of lemon.
Great. Yeah, I mean, so something positive is coming out of this lockdown, really. I mean, I think people are all transforming their lives. The world is never going to be the same again. We're not going to do the travel like we used to, and we need to focus on things in life that is really important. And this is what, I mean, if you now think back and so on, I mean, you're okay. It's kind of you later, you're still young. So am I. We're both the same age,
Right.
Life is not finishing now. I mean, this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast now, because I woke up one morning, looked in the mirror, and I really didn't like what I was looking at. A little bit like you were doing.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, and I'm also trying to transform my life. I mean, if you could talk to your 20-year-old self, I mean, what would you say to that person? With all the experience you have now, I mean, would you do?
It's a good question, because I've thought often. I thought that if I had channeled the energy that I have and the capacity that I have and the skills that I have, and if I would have focused all those things into a really narrow beam from the beginning, I could have been a multimillionaire today. No doubt about it.
I don't doubt you. I really don't doubt you.
I didn't channel that. I didn't focus. I sort of just went along and rode that wave. And then when that wave fizzled out, I just caught another wave and went on that and so forth. And so roughly every 10 years in my life, I've sort of reinvented myself and started something completely new, or something that I already had some building blocks for. And so, went and developed that further. And I now feel that with this collective awakening that I was talking about, where people are suddenly realizing that actually now that they've had more time to contemplate their own life, they've realized that there are things, and this is like a cliche, there's so many things that are more important than money, but now people are actually realizing on their own being that it's true.
Yeah,
and so
you're right.
People have different people have different priorities now. I can see it in my neighbors, even I can see it in my wife. I can definitely feel it in myself. I can see it in you, because you're doing this now. And it doesn't matter where I look. More and more people are turning their backs on meat and industrialized food production, etc. So also with my whole foods plant-based thing, I don't eat meat imitation. I don't eat vegetable meatballs or veggie sausages or anything like that. It's poisonous. Yeah. It's hyper processed, and it's I stay away from it. I go as far to the root of the product as possible, and then whatever it's processed happens in my own kitchen.
Yeah, 90% of what you can see in the supermarket shelves, you shouldn't actually touch. I mean, it's full of additives. I mean, Denmark is one of the biggest producers of food additives. They actually export food additives to the rest of the world. And I mean,
sick.
we think we advanced here in Denmark, but I mean, when you look at it from that point of view, we actually kind of go in the opposite direction.
Right. But on the other hand, you have a vegan party that's entering the parliament.
Yeah, you have, and that can only be a positive thing. I mean,
Yeah,
hopefully
I
that will
agree.
help people to change their lives and think in a little bit
Right.
of a different direction. You know,
Right.
so yeah, no, it's great.
I did consider, if I ever have to come back to Denmark, I want to be a politician in that vegan party.
They could need somebody like you, I think, with that kind of
Yeah,
energy.
yeah.
I think
Maybe
that
I'll do that in my 70s.
yeah, exactly. We first start living now, Frank. There's a long life in front of
Yeah,
us,
exactly.
particularly if we look after
Exactly.
ourselves.
Exactly. So a lot of people ask me, oh, so how did you end up in Joburg? And my answer is, I haven't ended up anywhere yet.
No. And I have lots of dreams. I have so many things I still want to achieve in my life. I mean, I've been stuck on a track for many years. And of course, I had the education I have as a chiropractor, and you get down and you get a clinic and so on. And at some stage, I had 4 or 5 clinics, and I realized this crisis here, every time there's a crisis, it kind of kicks me up the butt. It actually wants me to transform. I mean, the last financial crisis, we actually pulled up our roots in London and moved to Denmark because we wanted a quieter life. Unfortunately, I was back on the track again and starting opening clinics again. And now this crisis came, and it's not going to happen again. I've learned my lesson now. I know I have to focus on the right things in life, because otherwise I'm going to be unhappy. I'm going to be stressed. I'm not going to sleep well at night. And I'm going to start having varicose veins and rashes on my body and fungus growing between my teeth or my feet, I was going to say, yeah. So, I mean, we need to wake up and kind of realize that, life is not finished because you're 50 or nearly 60.
You have a lot of the same qualities, or the other way, whatever you want to call it, as I do, in terms of you don't do things in half measures. So I knew very well that when you moved to Denmark, that it was only a question of time until you had 1 clinic, 2 clinics, 3 clinics, 4 clinics.
I couldn't help myself.
Traveling all over the country.
I really couldn't help myself, and that's not the way I need to go. I have a little practice now, and I'm going to stay with that. And I have no employers; it's all online booking. And I really enjoy life now. I don't have any responsibility apart from my patients. If I want a week off, I can take a week off. And I'm going to cut my hours down, and I'm going to focus on the podcasting and focus on myself. Me and my wife, Leo, we intend to also start growing. We have 3.5 acres, and we have plenty of. In half a year, the ground is free of pesticides and so on, and we can start growing our own vegetable here too. And this is what I want to go also. A little bit what you're doing now. And I think that's the way forward. Really, definitely for me.
Let me know if you need any tips on the planting stuff or whatever. But I know that both you.
I need lots of help from you,
and
mate.
Leo are already very good. I mean, Leo is very good with her green fingers, so I know that.
Yeah, but I need a lot of guidance from you, and you're great at it, and I know you will share it with me. So that's not a problem at all.
Sure.
Yeah. See, now when people
just watch, grow, eat, yum.
Yeah, where can people actually find you? Where can they find and see these pictures?
It's my handle on Instagram is Frank's House Lush Food. Hang on. No, not that one. Hang on. Sorry.
Because I think some people are interested in having a look at these wonderful pictures you've taken of your meals. I mean, it's absolutely...
Yeah, okay, so it's Frank's House, all in one word, _lush, _plant, _food. Frank's House, Lush Plant Food.
Yeah.
There you can see my food, and you can follow me if you like it. I don't really do recipes to the detail, and that's also, a Grow, Eat, Yum will be a guide. It'll be more like a lifestyle guide, more than, my friends always ask me, oh, please send me the recipe. I want to try to make that. But my comeback is also always, there isn't an exact recipe, because chances are one of the ingredients is leftovers from yesterday. You know what I mean? So I always try to minimize food waste, and there's always going to be something in the fridge that you can't put in a recipe. So and also sometimes dishes evolve, and what you end up with is actually not what you had in your mind when you started. So what I want to impart to other people is how you can make that work and what goes with what. You know, salt, sweet, sour, fermented, etc. And so I want people to train their own palate, to learn through their own experiences what works for them and what doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm able to give that guidance. And so it's not going to be like, you know, look at the recipe at the bottom of the screen, or after the show you can look up online. You know, I can obviously list the ingredients and the rough guidelines of proportions and things like that, but it isn't going to be 1 cup of flour and 1 cup of this and 1 cup of that and 10 grams of that. That's not how we operate here.
No, Frank, really, this has been a dream come true interviewing you. I mean, you've been a great guest on my podcast, and I really enjoyed this, you know, and hopefully we can make another podcast soon. When you got a little bit further in your food adventure. And I mean, you talked a little bit about maybe even having a TV station. So let's hope it goes that way, so more people can benefit from the experience.
At the moment. I'm making a pilot, and then I'm going to try to pitch it to you know, Apple TV, Danmarks Radio, ZDF, ARD, BBC, South African Broadcasting Corporation, the plant-based network out of the US, whatever. HBO, anybody who wants to listen, Netflix, you know.
And I have no doubt that it will be a huge success, Frank. I know that because of your determination and willpower. It's going to happen. I know it will.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. Let's stop the podcast here, Frank, because I mean, I think this is a good place to stop it. But it's been wonderful.
Thanks, Morten.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. Bye.